For our first segment this morning, we want to hear from you about that anonymous New York Times op-ed from somebody claiming to be a senior Trump administration official, laying out a case on why that person and others have formed a, quote, quiet resistance inside President Trump's administration designed to, quote, frustrate parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations. Here's how you can give us your thoughts on this op-ed. For Democrats, it's 202-748-8000. For Republicans, 202-748-8001. And Independents, 202-748-8002. You can post thoughts on Twitter this morning at C-SPAN WJ and on our Facebook page at facebook.com/C-SPAN. The op-ed, which was written anonymously, appears in the pages of the New York Times this morning, also online. I am part of the resistance inside the Trump administration is the title of this piece. Here's some of the thoughts. The author says that, to be clear, ours is not the popular, quote, resistance of the left. We want the administration to succeed and think that many of its policies have already made America safer and more prosperous. But we believe our first duty is to this country, and the president continues to act in a manner that is detrimental to the health of our republic. The author goes on to say the root of the problem is the president's amorality. Anyone who works with him knows he is not moored to any discernible first principles that guide his decision-making. Although he was elected as a Republican, the president shows little affinity for ideals long espoused by conservatives, free minds, free markets, and free people. At best, he has evoked these ideals in scripted settings. At worst, he has attacked them outright. The author goes on to say, in addition to his mass marketing of the notion that the press is the, quote, enemy of the people, President Trump's impulses are generally anti-trade and anti-democratic. The author goes on from there on these ideas that are laid out in the New York Times op-ed, again, written anonymously, and we want to get your thoughts on it. 202-748-8000 for Democrats. For Republicans, 202-748-8001, and Independents, 202-748-8002. Post on Twitter at C-SPAN WJ and on our Facebook page, facebook.com/C-SPAN. For his part, the President of the United States, President Trump, commenting on this op-ed and his thoughts on its authorship. Here's what he had to say.
Nobody has ever done in less than a 2-year period what we've done. So when you tell me about some anonymous source within the administration, probably who's failing and probably here for all the wrong reasons, no. And the New York Times is failing. If I weren't here, I believe the New York Times probably wouldn't even exist. And someday, let me just tell you, and someday when I'm not president, which hopefully will be in about 6.5 years from now, the New York Times and CNN and all of these phony media outlets will be out of business, folks. They'll be out of business because there'll be nothing to write and there'll be nothing of interest. So nobody has done what this administration has done. And I agree, it's different from an agenda, which is much different than ours, and it's certainly not your agenda, that I can tell you.
Thank you.
It's about open borders. It's about letting people flee into our country. It's about a disaster and crime for our country. So they don't like Donald Trump, and I don't like them because they're very dishonest people. Remember this also about the New York Times. When I won, they were forced to apologize to their subscribers. They wrote a letter of apology. It was the first time anybody's ever done it because they covered the election incorrectly. So if the failing New York Times has an anonymous editorial, can you believe it? Anonymous. Meaning gutless, a gutless editorial. We're doing a great job. The poll numbers are through the roof. Our poll numbers are great. And guess what? Nobody is going to come close to beating me in 2020 because of what we've done.
The thoughts of the president yesterday on this topic. To your calls, we'll start with Carl in Chicago. Democrats line. Carl, go ahead.
Good morning. How you doing, Pedro? Some months ago, maybe sometime last year, on one of my previous calls, I had described the problem with Donald Trump as this individual also as being an amoral person. And I don't know if people really understand being amoral, that's totally an abnormal individual. And this is serious, and you might, I know people might not recognize it because we don't normally consider people in these terms, but Donald Trump has no sense of anything, no values, no principles. He doesn't even know right from wrong. He doesn't know the truth from not the truth. He is mentally ill. He's mentally deficient. And that,
So, Carl,
actually,
Carl, the fact that the piece was written anonymously, does that do anything for you?
what it does for me is say that, well, our government shouldn't be run like this. And I know there's going to be supporters of his, but at what point do you ask yourself, when am I going to maybe look at the possibility of these things that people are saying?
Okay.
It's not just this author. You got all the stuff that described in Woodward's book. We've heard all these stories.
Okay. We'll leave it there. Let's go to another Chicagoite. This is from Independent Line. David, hello.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for bringing up this topic. I read this op-ed very closely, and one key leitmotif that's missing is immigration, which makes me think that this is a misdirection, that somebody who wrote it handles immigration issues very, very often in the administration. And I'm thinking it might be Kristen Nielsen. I'll tell you why. Yesterday, when the camera panned the room where Trump was speaking in the cabinet room, it's almost like she didn't want to be scanned by the camera. She wanted to crawl away. And we know that her chief of staff, Chad Wolf, is an open borders, part of the former India caucus. So it makes me wonder if somebody deals with immigration quite a bit, who I deliberately omitted it in this op-ed.
Okay.
So that's my take on it.
Gotcha. Republican Line from Virginia. June is next. Hello.
Hey, good morning to you.
Morning.
I now reside in Georgia, and I live in a black town, and I love it. So I'm not a racist. Let's start that right from the very beginning.
What does that have to do with the op-ed that we're talking about?
Well, because they tried to pin him as this and that and, anything to bring him down. As far as there being someone within the administration that's working there that doesn't like Donald Trump, doesn't stand for what he stands for, shouldn't be there in the first place. And second of all, I really don't even believe it, because when you don't say who your source is, when you're making such an accusation as this, making it sound like Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He's probably the smartest president we've ever had, because he has brought people to the table that no one else has been able to do. So, nobody wants to give him credit on the left, but they better wake up.
That's June in Virginia. Some of the reaction off of Twitter this morning. This is the Vice President's Communications Director, Jared Agan, saying that the Vice President puts his name on op-eds. The New York Times should be ashamed, and so should the person who wrote the false, illogical, and gutless op-ed. Our office is above such amateur acts. Also, the Associated Press reporting that U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo denies writing the anonymous New York Times opinion piece about thwarting President Trump. Those are just some of the reactions off Twitter. Again, on the phone lines, if you want to give us a call, on our social media sites as well. Yemi in Maryland, Democrats line. Hi.
Good morning, Pedro. It's funny listening to the last lady talking, telling America this is the smartest president ever. Let me have a rest. This president is putting the country down. I applaud the person that write the op-ed, but that person needs to come out, claim to America, then he can be a hero for everybody. I'm an immigrant, but American citizen. The way this president is running the country reminds me of where I come from. I'm scared every day what the president is doing.
So you agree with the author and the points this author's trying to make?
Yes, but that person needs to come out. Everybody will now rise for him. He's doing the right thing for the country. He should not be scared. Majority of the country is behind him. We all know the president is wrong. But only God knows how he gets there. God wants us to learn something from this president. That's why he put him there. But now we've all learned what we need to learn. We're going to show it in November by voting. But this president is not good for America, I tell you that.
Okay, let's go to North Carolina. Independent Line. This is Neil. Hello.
Hey, good morning.
You're on. Go ahead.
great conversation. Just a couple of quick points. I've been trying to be quite pragmatic about this president, our president, and I think personally, if this is someone that doesn't want to say who they are, I'm kind of concerned because, Edward Snowden also said that he was doing things for the, quote, good of the people. Second, I think I'm quite concerned about the timing. If this person was appointed and they've been doing this job for a while, they kind of knew what they were getting into. And this, what are we, a month and a half or so away from the midterm election? That's kind of suspect. And I guess lastly, the third point is that if the president is exhibiting these tendencies, as the author states, well, evidently that tension between his tendencies and the people he has appointed in office must be working. 4% plus GDP growth, great numbers of people, coming off the E6 rolls, the chronically unemployed, those numbers removing African American women, all these numbers are fantastic. And the money supply is opening up quite a bit. I mean, even though the interest rates are going up a little bit, we have seen growth in wages. So,
okay. Jack is next in Oklahoma, Republican line.
Yes, I'd like to help the Democrats out and give them the people that they missed whenever Trump got elected. I'm one of them people that they counted out in the middle of America, the heartland, and where you guys are missing our views is we know how to discern people. Now, when Trump come in to be threw his hat in the ring when he was coming out of the elevator, I said, that's going to be our next president. And I never changed my vote anyway. I said, no matter what happened, even when the locker room talk come out, you know why? When Trump's been rich his whole life, it's every building that he built, he wanted to be the best and everything. He never wanted nothing to mar his image.
So Jack, with all of that in mind, the op-ed, what do you think of it?
What I think is Trump is an honest president.
No, but I mean of the op-ed that was published. What do you think of that? What do you think about the thoughts of this anonymous author?
Oh, I think it's just a disgruntled someone that didn't want Trump to become president, that wanted Hillary to become president, is still mad about the election, and that's all it is. But let me explain something. Trump didn't come to be president. Didn't want to be president because he needed to be, but he didn't come. Everybody says he's come to rip off money. He's got more money than him and his family could ever spend. Okay.
Okay. That's Jack. That's Jack in Oklahoma. So reaction from legislators. This is Rhode Island Democrat David Cicilline saying that, dear anonymous senior official in the Trump administration, thank you for your words. They would be much more powerful if you came out and identified yourself. I promise there are millions of Americans who will hold you up as a hero. Some other reaction, Jamie Raskin this morning saying an anonymous senior official in the Trump administration wrote that president's own cabinet considered invoking the 25th Amendment. And that's his statement to that. By the way, the op-ed does take consideration of this idea of the 25th Amendment, saying this isn't the work of the so-called deep state, it's the work of the steady state. Given the instability many witnessed, there were early whispers within the cabinet of invoking the 25th Amendment, which would start a complex process for removing the president, but no one wanted to precipitate a constitutional crisis. So we will do what we can to steer the administration in the right direction until one way or the other it's over. The bigger concern is not what Mr. Trump has done to the presidency, but rather what we as a nation have allowed him to do to us. We have sunk low with him and allowed our discourse to be stripped with civility. The 25th Amendment has 4 parts. The 4th part, or at least part of it, reads as such, by the way, saying whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting president. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Milton, go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. My main point is this author, whoever it is, they should have came out. But I see them as a patriot. someone that's trying to look out for our country and sending us warning signs that something is seriously wrong with President Trump. He has the nuclear football. With his tension tantrums, he could get us into an all-out war. That should concern every single American. I don't understand why America, even Bob Corker said he is like an adult daycare over there at the White House. His erratic behavior, forget if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, if it doesn't concern you, world leaders who meet with him can say he's not quite there.
So Milton,
wake up, America.
Milton, did you read the op-ed?
Well, I read parts of it off and on, but
what struck you most? What struck you most about the op-ed, the parts you read?
The parts that concern me is the fact that they have to that the guy. I don't know who this. It may be a female. We don't know. The part is that it's pretty much about his erratic behavior.
Okay.
It's more so that concerns me.
Okay, we'll go to Greg in Illinois, Independent Line. Hi.
Yes. I think all of us need to step back and before we get too excited and talking about the 25th Amendment and just people are getting in a frenzy, I'm going to take the stance that this is a anonymous letter, which usually goes back to this could be a letter that was written by me. Who knows? Who knows where this letter came? Who knows it came from the White House?
You don't trust. You don't trust that it came from the White House?
I don't think this is a letter from the White House. I think this is an outside, just another plan, another hoax to get everybody all excited and talking impeachment, and it's just silly that everybody takes so serious. My local paper would not accept an anonymous source for an op-ed. I don't know papers did that because there's no way to verify that their letters are where they come from.
By the way, there's a story in the New York Times this morning that highlights the thinking of the editors in publishing this piece. Michael Grinbaum wrote the story saying it's exceedingly rare for the Times to grant anonymity to a writer in its op-ed pages, and the paper could cite only a handful of previous cases. But James Dow, the paper's op-ed editor, said in an interview that the material in the essay was important enough to the public interest to merit an exception. Quote, this was a strongly, clearly written piece by someone who was staking out what we felt was a very principled position that deserved an airing, Mr. Dowell said. The story goes on to say the op-ed article was submitted to the Times opinion editors last week through an intermediary. Mr. Dowell said, quote, it was clear early on that the writer wanted anonymity, but we didn't grant anything until we read it and we were confident that they were who they say they were. Goes on from there, but there's some of the reasoning, at least the thinking when it comes to the editors. David Frum, who was a speechwriter in the George W. Bush administration, has a piece on The Atlantic on this op-ed that was published. He writes this in part saying, what the author has done is throw the government of the United States into even more dangerous turmoil. He or she has inflamed the paranoia of the president and empowered the president's willfulness. What happens next time a staffer seeks to dissuade the president from, say, purging the Justice Department to shut down Robert Mueller's investigation? The author of the Times op-ed has explicitly told the president that those who offer such advice do not have the president's best interest at heart and are, in fact, actively subverting the best interest that he understands them on behalf of the ideas of their own, adding that he'll grow more defiant, more reckless, more anti-constitutional, and more dangerous. Those are David Frum's thoughts. You can see them on the website of The Atlantic. Greg in Illinois, go ahead.
That is Greg.
Oh, okay.
I am Greg.
Gotcha. Jim in Pearl Harbor, Florida, Republican line.
Yes, it's typical for the New York Times to write an anonymous article to try to prevent this president from getting through his agenda, but they're failing. There are 15 Republican people that ran for the presidency. He knocked them all out. I respect him. He's a winner. He says he's a winner, and he is.
What's wrong with? Did you read the article? Did you read the op-ed for yourself?
Yes. Well, I listened to it
on the news, actually on C-SPAN this morning.
What did you think about at least some of the contents there? What specifically struck you as far as things you disagreed with or things you had questions about?
The fact that they have a cabal and they're trying to steer him in the right direction. There's no way they're going to do that. He's going to take his own direction, and the direction is good for the country. The tariffs are good. Nobody tackled them before.
Some of the
economy is good. It's so stupid. How can they just keep knocking this man when he's accomplishing so much? What's the reason for it?
The president touting his accomplishments on Twitter this morning. He starts with a just one-word tweet and the question mark, which says treason, I think in reaction to this op-ed, adding, so does the so-called senior administration official really exist, or is it just the failing New York Times with another phony source? If the gutless anonymous person does indeed exist, the Times must, for national security purposes, turn him or her over to the government at once. I'm draining the swamp, the president continues, and the swamp is trying to fight back. Don't worry, we will win. Susan in Hartsdale, New York. Hi.
Hi, Pedro. Good morning.
Morning.
I believe that this person, kudos to them. This person is our deep throat. It is just, I'm glad that there's people who are inside assuring us that they're looking out for the interest of the American people and for this country. That is true patriotism, not what Donald Trump talks about. And he has real nerve to say that the Times would be done if he were no longer president. I mean, the Times existed long before he came into power. It's going to exist long after he goes out of power. It's just there, and I have to say that there is probably nothing that surprised me in this article, in this op-ed, because if you had a sense of Trump from the beginning, you saw all this. He is out for himself.
So Susan, what do you think about the fact that it was penned anonymously? Does that matter, or does it?
I don't think it matters, because I believe that if whoever this person is came out and said who they were, they'll end up being kicked out of the White House and then cannot work for the good of this country.
That's Susan in Hartsdale. Some other reaction off of Twitter. Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, saying that America has one duly elected president. Anybody serving at his pleasure should do so faithfully. When they feel they can no longer, they should resign and speak in their own name so the country can evaluate their insights with a full understanding of where they are coming from. Some other reactions there as well off of Twitter to this op-ed. From our Twitter feed at C-SPAN WJ, this is Michael saying that the anonymous NYT op-ed now drives the discussion to what today's mainstream media likes to do, speculate. The New York Times leads with it, and the Washington Post is split with it. And Woodward's book looks like a full court press, he says. And then Rick says that the op-ed confirms what we knew about the president. It's past time to use the 25th Amendment to save the nation from this totally unfit president. The heroic thing to do for any opposition within the White House is to come forward and declare. Again, at C-SPAN WJ is our Twitter feed if you want to post there. Frank is next. He's in Oklahoma, Independent Line.
Yes, I think it's probably Bob Woodward is the author of the piece, if there is an author at all. This is just a continuation of the coup against President Trump that began before he even became president. The FBI and the State Department, Obama's White House, they were all investigating him and doing all this weirdness, and it's just a continuation.
What do you think about the charges then this op-ed makes about the president and his administration and how he executes the office of the presidency?
I think it's all a bunch of foolishness, and whoever is taking paper off his desk, if it ever occurs, needs to be adjudicated.
That's one of the revelations from the Bob Woodward book earlier this week. A couple of the things happening on Capitol Hill, aside from what's going on with the op-ed, This is within Congress about replacement for Senator McCain, saying and tapping John Kyle to replace the late Senator John McCain. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey will send a reliable conservative voice to the Senate for at least until the end of the year. Ducey has appointed as a personal mentor who has 18 years experience in the Senate. He rejoins after nearly 6 years away. Kyle will not retain his seniority in the U.S. Senate, according to an aide for the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Quote, he's a beacon of integrity, highly regarded by people on both sides of the aisle, and he's able to work across party lines to get results, he said while announcing his selection. Governor Ducey going on to say there's a reason he was considered one of the best senators in the country. It's because he was. That's what's going on as far as the actual replacement for Senator McCain when it comes to his positions in Congress and the office or the chairmanships that he served. The Senate Armed Services Committee now has a new face. That's Senator Jim Inhofe. He's been the face of the Senate Armed Services Committee for the last 9 months. Now he's going to officially lead it. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced that the 83-year-old Inhofe of Oklahoma will be the new chairman of the committee on Wednesday, formally recognizing him as the chamber's top voice on military and defense policy issues. California is next, Republican line. We will hear from Kevin. Hello.
Good morning, Pedro. I like your suit today. I think that the op-ed is disgusting, and it makes me sick. I think the author who wrote it is a coward. Let's remember that we don't know who the author is because it's anonymous, and nobody knows. It could have been some creative writer who has a great imagination who puts himself in a position in the White House and writes about what he thinks he sees. Nobody knows who that was. People are thinking it's real, and it's a disgrace on behalf of journalism to the New York Times to publish something like this where people are going to think it's real, think someone was really in the administration. You don't know. We don't know that someone was actually in the administration. And about the president, you know, I can't stand politicians because I don't trust them. I don't think they're for the people. But this president came and he said, here's what I'm going to do, guys. And he did it. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that he told us he was going to do things, and he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And as far as politicians are concerned, that's as good as it gets. Way to go, President Trump.
Okay, Carla from Missouri, Independent Line. Hi.
Hi. These callers are so interesting. I'm sort of a news junkie, and I agree with Lindsey Graham. This is going to matter zero to the people in the country when it comes time to vote. Midwesterners are very common sense people, and I agree with the two callers from Illinois. And the one who said that Bob Woodward probably wrote this himself, that is a possibility. But the thing that bothers me about this is the timing of it. I think this is sort of a group opportunity during these hearings, which I think are disgusting, to disgrace the president. He's immune to these things. I don't like some of the things he says. I'm an independent. I used to be a Republican, but I got disenchanted several years ago, way before Trump came into power. But I like the things he does, and that's the important thing, isn't it? I'm just very disenchanted with the news media. I can see where we can't trust anybody anymore. It's very disheartening.
That's Carla.
And I'm 86 years old.
That's Carla from Missouri giving us her thinking on this op-ed that came out yesterday. Well, revealed yesterday, came out in the pages of the New York Times today. And we'll get your thoughts on it for a couple of more minutes. Yesterday, a lot of hearings taking place. The hearing for Brett Kavanaugh on the Senate Judiciary Committee, a round of questioning there. Again, you can see that at cspan.org if you want to see another round that will take place today. That will start at 9:30. C-SPAN 3 is where you can find it. Also monitored on cspan.org and our radio app. The Senate also holding a hearing featuring the heads of social media companies talking about foreign influences, talking about other topics. The heads of Facebook and Twitter, part of those hearings in the chamber. Outside of the chamber, as CNBC reports and others, there was a little bit of a back and forth between Senator Marco Rubio of Florida and the host of a program called InfoWars, Alex Jones, who did not testify at that hearing with the social media executives, but he also just sat there. You'll remember that Alex Jones was kicked off many platforms because of the views he takes. That's the story. But here's the back and forth that took place outside of the hearing between the Senator Marco Rubio and Alex Jones.
My broader concern is that what we are trying to do in terms of preventing foreign interference in our elections, that technology could be used by authoritarian governments to argue, we want you to do the same thing against people that are in our country operating. For example, for them, misinformation would be something like the truth. For them, sowing instability would be supporting democracy and free speech.
But the Democrats are doing what you said China does.
Answers that you got from Sheryl Sandberg and Jack Dorsey on that question.
I think Facebook now I think it's important for them not to comply with any efforts to sort of go after freedom of expression.
What about the Democrats purging conservatives?
She's
not answering him. Just the Republicans are acting like it isn't happening. Thank God Trump is.
Well, but
it's weird, man.
Oh yeah, it's really weird. There's no purge of conservatives.
I don't know.
There's no shadow banning
are you
of members of Congress.
Bias in social media?
Yeah, who's this guy? We deplatformed
him. Are you concerned about bias in social media?
Well, I think the bigger bias is against freedom of expression. Everybody should be. There's a look. I support going after.
It's happening here, but you say I don't exist.
Is that a heckler or a press gaggle?
Look at this guy. He's saying that I don't exist, and they're deplatforming.
I just don't know who you are, man. I don't read
your
website.
Sure, and they demonize me in these very hearings, and then he plays dumb.
Here's the question.
Infowars.com.
Do you think that does Google, does Facebook, does Twitter, do they need to be regulated like do they need to be regulated?
Marco Rubio the snake. Little frat boy here.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Well, who are you?
Yeah, sure.
This guy? I swear to God, I don't know
you better
who
hope
you
you
are,
get deplatforming. Tens of millions of views.
Infowars.
Bigger than Rush Limbaugh. He knows who Infowars is.
But
playing this joke over here. That's why the deplatforming didn't work.
But here's the question. Here's a question.
Don't touch me again, man. I'm asking you not to touch me.
Well, sure, I just patted you nicely.
I know, but I don't want to be. I don't know
you,
man.
I don't know
who you are.
It's not just going to.
You're not going to get arrested, man. You're not going to get arrested. I'll take care of it myself.
Oh, he'll beat me up.
I didn't say that.
You didn't know who I am, but he's so mad. You're not going to silence me. You're not going to silence America.
Again, that's some of the back and forth that took place yesterday in the halls of the Senate with all these hearings going on. This op-ed for the next couple of minutes. Eric, Compton, California, Democrats line. Thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
Good morning, America. Thank you, C-SPAN. I'd like to say the op-ed has a name. When God told Moses to go see the Pharaoh, he said, tell him I am. Remember,
Eric, to the actual op-ed and its contents, what do you think of it?
Again, it speaks for itself.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Again, everybody is entitled to their opinion. But if we're talking about there's no name on there, look at that. It says, I am.
Well, wait a minute. It's an anonymous piece. Does that matter or not in the fact that it's written anonymously?
Again, it's not anonymous. The name I am stands for God. Everybody knows this.
Okay. We'll go to Keith from Illinois, Democrats line. Hi.
Good morning. Well, it's clear. What we have to stop doing is looking at these as one-offs. Okay, so we have to look at it over a pattern of behavior. The Woodward book comes out. Woodward is our most esteemed living journalist. You don't want that? You don't accept that? Fine. Then you don't like free media and you don't like journalism. And that's okay.
So to the op-ed itself, what do you think of it?
I just said it, Pedro. Listen again.
No, you talked about the Woodward book. When it comes to the op-ed itself, what do you think of the contents there?
Party affiliation. It's time to put aside party affiliation and invoke the 25th. The 25th is written for this very purpose. So if we're not going to use an amendment that was written for this situation, then let's get rid of the 25th.
So you think that suggestion should be taken off of anonymous op-ed, even though we don't know who the author of this piece is?
Yes, because it's not a one-off, Pedro. We have Fire and Fury. We have contemporary reports, and we've watched non-rational behavior. So you can treat it as a one-off, but it's not a one-off.
Okay.
We've been going through this for the past 3 years.
That's Keith in Chicago, Illinois. The last comment, at least as far as this section is concerned when it comes to that op-ed. A couple of other things we'll be talking about during the course of our program this morning.